Now, what about the man himself? What about the blonde across the water? I mean, is he hold below the waterline?
I think so for the moment. Never say never with Boris Johnson. When I sort of turned up in Westminster this morning, I was struck by a conversation with a Conservative MP who was just astounded that Johnson hadn't turned up to the Commons on Monday when Sunak was unveiling the deal to MPs. And this MP felt that Johnson had bottled it, he'd choked. And there has been that
look, wasn't it?
It was a bad look, also because in the sort of 24 hours since, 48 hours now, there's been a back and forth, a sort of hesitation. Is he going to speak? Is he not? And it just, you get the sense, as some of his allies have even been admitting publicly, he's just been trying to read which way the wind's blowing.
Well, that was the quote. That was the quote. He's waited to see which way the wind is blowing, close quotes, which goes down in my book as one of the worst pieces of spin I've heard for a long time.
It's terrible, isn't it? But then again, terrible doesn't often affect Boris Johnson. You know, he stretches the rules of political gravity. And so, you know, he might well get away with this again. You know, it's typical Boris Johnson, not atypical for him to be missing in action when his name is getting trashed in the chamber. I mean, that's absolutely par for the course. Let's not forget, you know, it would have been amazing if he had turned up and taken the beating that he got subsequently from Rishi Sunak. I mean,
no, Paul, I don't think it would have been amazing. You could have turned. I could have, and you could have written him a little bit of script to have in his pocket as he sat there in the House of Commons among his colleagues, looking like a sort of blonde polar bear presence, not saying very much, looking sort of a bit stolid. And at a certain point, get up and say, "Thank you for that statement. My right honourable friend has done his best for the country. I think we can all see that. And what I'd say now is that we need to take close cognizance of the text that he's obtained in these long and protracted negotiations, and then reach a measured judgment in the interest of the country." And that I undertake to do.
But
he could have said that.
That'd be a stiletto.
You pitching for a job, John.
That'd be a stiletto in the back of Rishi Sunak in full view of everybody.
No, he leaves his option open of going
and
where the wind blows later.
And he's not that bold when it comes to face-to-face confrontation, John. Don't forget, that's not Boris Johnson's way of working. He hates confrontation. You know, he hated sacking people. Famously, you know, Sajid Javid went in there and Johnson didn't want to sack him. And finally, Sajid Javid had to walk out because he said, "All right, I'm going to resign because you're not going to sack me." He hates confrontation. He hates it on a personal level. And I think personally that actually this will be water off a duck's back. You know, he really won't be that bothered. And what will happen, he'll just look and bide his time and wait for the local election results. And if those are bad, he'll then say, look, it doesn't matter about all this other stuff, doesn't matter about the accord with the EU, you're getting hammered domestically at the polls. Everyone will say it's all your fault, Boris, but he'll say, no, look, I'm your last best hope.
So that begs the question, has the flame gone out? Has the Boris Johnson flame actually guttered out finally, and could it possibly be revived? I mean, this is the second attempt in a couple of weeks to sort of usurp. He hasn't made that attempt, but the plan was there. We all know that. We know that for a fact. The plan was there to usurp Rishi Sunak, and it came to nothing. I mean, could there be a third time?
Well, I think Paul's absolutely right. In his own mind, that flame will never die. But I think, as I just mentioned earlier, this privileges committee into Partygate and whether he misled the Commons about it is coming up. It's about to start its public hearings in coming weeks. It's been delayed. But I think that's going to be a really awkward period for him. I think that makes it difficult, even if the party do badly in the May elections. I also think the other calculation that he'll make from the May election showing will be, what does the swing suggest for his seat in Uxbridge and South Ruislip? You know, it might be then that he thinks, well, you know, I want to preserve my reputation as a winner. I don't want to, you know, go down fighting and lose my parliamentary seat as well. So I suspect he might turn for a few years to just making tons of wonga and could even step down from the Commons at the next election.
That's intriguing. It's possible. I personally think more likely is he'll do the chicken run to Nadine Dorris's seat, and it's a safer seat, and you know, it's on a plate. Every constituency association in the country, virtually all of them will take him. You know, he's got the pick of his seats. Don't forget, they're the party that voted for Liz Truss in the grassroots. You know, and the party that were really upset he was gone.
But if that's anything like literally true, that any Conservative association in the country would take him as their candidate, that means he's got a store of votes there among the deep-dyed grassroots card-carrying members who, in the end, do choose the Prime Minister. If you can get past the members of Parliament, the parliamentary party, if you can crack that one, if he makes another attempt, well, then maybe it all happens. Maybe that shipping, Pirates of the Caribbean, comes washing to the surface, yet again, flag flying.
Well, he's certainly got these backers now who've set up the Conservative Democratic Organisation, Lord Cruddas, Priti Patel, who are trying to kind of inject this idea of democracy into the grassroots, trying to claw back votes for members on the next leader. But if the party heads into opposition, I'm interested in both of your view, whether you think he'd fancy the job as leader of the opposition. I can't see it. After being Prime Minister, I can well believe he'd like to be Prime Minister again, but years of hard slog, a 5-year term.
I think you're absolutely right, Lucy. Opposition is not a job for Boris Johnson. There's no question. It's too much like hard work. That's precisely why I think he knows his last best shot of getting back into number 10 is to oust Rishi Sunak somehow before the next election and come to the rescue late in the day and say, look, I'll go down fighting, but, at least we'll be fighting. He'll have a chance.
I think that's dead. A complete unanimity on this. I think I'm guessing that would appeal to the Boris Johnson that we think we know. Not at all. No invitations to foreign capitals. If you're invited to make a big speech in front of a big audience, you don't get a big check at the end of it. What's in it for the leader of the opposition at the beginning of a term of opposition, especially if that person happens to be Boris Johnson? No, shaking heads all round. We are shaking heads like a set of wooden toys here, echoing each other. If not, then Boris Johnson, who is capable of being a threat to Rishi Sunak? Maybe no one is. But if the May elections come and it's not Boris Johnson, then who need Rishi Sunak fear?
I don't think anyone else, to be frank. I think he's shown in the last few days an alternative future for the Tory party. He's effectively, on the best reading of the last few days, he's future-proof the Tory party. He's shown that they can restore a sense of competence, financial credibility on the global markets. And it's a sort of long haul that basically, if in a way, I know this sounds odd, but he's in office, the Neil Kinnock of the Tory party. He's rebuilding their reputation in office. It won't do him any favours like Neil Kinnock. He might go down to defeat. But over the long term, he's turning the party round away from the sense of incompetence and sort of Brexit dysfunction. And you can say that over time, towards a technocratic, AI-led future, which everyone needs to know, and a green tech future, and getting them in the right place, for one day when they'll return. And maybe even a little income tax cut before the next election.
Do you know what, Paul? That is such an interesting argument, which I've never heard deployed in that way before. There's got to be a column in it for you. Or have you already...
I haven't written that.
Haven't written that one yet.
Should.
I suggest you make that one your next one. What do you think? Rishi Sunak as the Neil Kinnock in office.
Yeah, fascinating take, as ever, Paul. Look, I don't think he'll be ousted before the next election because, bar Boris Johnson, even as staunch as critics now are saying it's not possible, I was really struck. For me, it felt quite a significant moment that Jacob Rees-Mogg, who we know hates Rishi and loves Boris, came out and said, no change of leader before the next election. We'd look like a joke. The circus is over. It's got to be him. And I thought, if even he doesn't feel up to the sort of the fight,
maybe he's seen the way the wind's blowing as well.
Well, maybe he has, but I just think you need enough people to sort of to try and fell Sunak. So I think he'll probably be the leader into the next election.
But if Jacob's seat's under threat, as it might be, like a lot of other seats under threat from the Lib Dems in the southwest, and other seats definitely are vulnerable. Who knows, a few months, even weeks before a general election, whether or not the Tories decide, that's it, come on, pull the ejector seat, get rid of Sunak. Let's at least give Boris one last chance.
Yeah. Easy lies the head that sits in number 10 Downing Street when the Conservative Party is in office just lately. Well, I'm John Pienaar, and if you found that interesting, we are here each day, Monday to Thursday, 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock on Drive, and from 7 till 8, Pienaar and Friends, where we discuss the big stories of the day each day on Times Radio.